Fred Fox Enterprises. Do I need to turn anything on, or?
It is now.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Once again, my name is David Fox with Fred Fox Enterprise. We're a grant writing administration firm that's worked with the county on several projects over the years. The county is looking at possibly applying for a CDBG grant. You're an advisory board. We're just going to go through the steps. There's an agenda provided. I'm going to start by calling roll. Andrew Chapman. Here. Jimmy Cherry. Here. If I don't call your name, you have to get back to you. Does that have a name on it? Shannon Roberts.
Here.
I need you to fill out the top line. John Stock. Doubt.
Oh, Coke. Sir?
I got it wrong.
Just like the brothers, diamonds, guns. We're into everything. Trucking, beer.
Write your name across the top line.
We can do that.
This your phone?
My name is on the top line.
Negative.
Jim Wright.
Negative.
Bruce Wood. Michelle Jones. Yeah,
You
she
write your name on there.
do you occur, didn't I?
You have a form for?
Yes, I believe I gave you Mr. Tate's form.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and there's my name right there.
Yeah, I do. Say your last name one more time.
Coke.
S-T.
Coke, as in,
Yeah, I got you. I thought it looked like S-T.
or industrial.
My fault.
You'll never forget it.
All right, so we have a quorum. We have all 5 members here present. Thank you very much for volunteering. Item 2 is discussion completion of CATF form. We just did that. That's what I needed to try to fill in. Presentation on small cities. There's a handout provided to you. This goes over the categories for the grants that are available. I'm just going to go over it with you real quick. This was an advertised meeting for 9 a.m. June 22nd, 2022. This is to discuss the possibility of the county applying for a fiscal year 2021-2022 CDBG grant. You are an advisory board. The council doesn't have to take your recommendation, but they definitely take in consideration to it, and usually they will take the recommendation. Page 2 of that handout. The county is eligible to apply for up to $750,000 in the first 3 categories. Now, under these first 3 categories, they can only apply for one of the categories. So if they apply for a housing, they can't apply for a commercial. They apply for a commercial, they can't apply for a neighborhood or housing. Same thing. So if you apply for number 1, you can't apply for 2 or 3. If you apply for 2, you can't apply for 1 or 3. If you apply for 3, you can't apply for 1 or 2. So the first category is is housing rehabilitation. Maximum amount to apply for is $750,000. That's where you go into owner-occupied, low to moderate income housing. You want a copy of this, sir? And you address all code violations, health and safety issues, Section 8 housing standards. For maximum points, the county would need to address 11 homes under that category. And all homes will be low to moderate income, so they have to meet the criteria. The second category is commercial revitalization. I don't know if the county even has an area for this, but that's where you go into a downtown commercial area that you're trying to get people to come downtown. It would have to be in the county, not in the incorporated city limits. And it would address, you could do streetscaping, benches, sidewalks, undergrounding of wiring for lighting, even if a parking lot was needed, or facade work. And at least 51% of the beneficiaries in the county would have to be low to moderate income. So you can usually do that by have to use a lot of census data. I don't know if you will meet that criteria. The third is neighborhood revitalization. That's where you go into a low to moderate income neighborhood. At least 51% of the beneficiaries, again, must be low to moderate income. And you can address infrastructure needs. Once again, it has to be in the county and not in incorporated city limits. But you can address water line improvements, sewer line improvements, drainage, neighborhood center needed park improvements. The fourth category is a standalone category. You got a previous grant under, it's the economic development category. Under that one, the county can actually apply for 1.5 million. It can exceed the 750,000. That's the only category you can do that in. You have to have a developer on board when the county applies. For every job the developer is creating, the county can apply for $34,999.99. At least 51% of the jobs must go to people that were low and moderate income prior to the year prior to them being employed by the new business. And that one you can apply for. Even if they have one of the others opening, a housing, a neighborhood, or commercial, they can still apply for an economic development, and they can apply for one of those every year. That's the only one that you can apply for more money than the 750, and that you can apply for if you have one open. Any questions on that slide? Page 3, we talk about low to moderate income. These are the maximum income amounts. So if you're doing a housing grant, based on the household size, they would have to be below the highlighted numbers. So a family of 1 would have to be below $34,000 a year. A family of 2, $38,850. A family of 3, $43,700. A family of 4, $48,550. A family of 5, $52,450. A family of 6, $56,350. A family of 7, $60,250. And a family of 8, $64,100. Over 8, we have to get information from HUD. HUD provides us through a website. It's based on area median. So if you were doing a neighborhood or commercial project, 51% of people benefiting will have to be below those maximum income levels. Page 4. This is a competitive grant. This county will compete against other small communities within the state of Florida if they decide to apply for these funds. If they put, for every $2,000 they put toward the project, they can get 1 point in leverage. Or up to, if they put in 50,000 toward the project, they could do up to 25 points in leverage. They can exceed the 50,000 in leverage, they just don't get any additional points for it. If they go in with a neighborhood or commercial project, if they have design ready, means the design's complete, ready to go to bid, and the permits have been applied for, they can get additional 50 points in the application under the neighborhood and commercial category. Under the design ready points, if the county decided to do a neighborhood or commercial project, and they went in design ready, even if funded, they will not get reimbursed that cost for the design. That's something that the community would take at risk to get the 50 additional points, but they do not get reimbursed for that cost. The steps required when applying for a CDBG application is 1, to appoint a citizen advisory task force, and thank you for volunteering to be on this board. 2 is to advertise and hold a CATF meeting, which this was advertised for today. The 3rd is advertise and hold a first public hearing to discuss the possible projects and categories. That's at 9:30 today, 9:30 a.m. Advertise and hold a fair housing workshop. That's at 9:30 or soon thereafter. And then once we get all the data, get a recommendation from this board or council. Council decides, it's public input, decides what kind of project they want to do. Then we'll put together an application draft and present to the county at a second public hearing. That will also be an advertised second public hearing. I would like now to open it up for public comment and for CATF member questions. First, is there anybody from the public that would like to speak? There's nobody from the public wishing to speak. I'm going to close the public comment and open it up for CATF comment and for proposed projects from the county staff.
Well, let's hear from you, Mr. Shannon.
Sure. When I look at option 2 and 3, the county doesn't have a commercial downtown building facade service area. I don't think we have anything. And even if we pick the spot, what I'd be concerned about is complying with the 51% LMI. That would be, I just don't think we could make it, and I don't have any data that says we could. And it's kind of the same thing for the neighborhood revitalization. The county does have a few very small neighborhoods, but most of those neighborhoods are above that LMI threshold.
And under that, this category, commercial and neighborhood, you have to address, I believe it's 85 low to moderate income households that benefit from the project. So if you don't have a condensed neighborhood, because for instance, if you were doing sidewalks, the only beneficiaries from sidewalks are the houses right in front of just where the sidewalk will be going. So So you have to do it not just in front of 85 homes for maximum points, but 85 low to moderate income homes. And that's determined by a survey, door-to-door survey.
And I think that's what the challenge is. It's not that we wouldn't endeavor to do other things, it's just with low to moderate income requirements. I just don't think we meet them. I think we stand a better chance going after a housing rehabilitation project, because then we've got applicants who have direct information, and we can screen applicants to understand where they're at and qualifying. And I know we've done that in the past, and that was very successful, so I think that might be our best bet.
Does the CATF have any proposed questions or proposed projects they'd like to see the county look at?
I just think we would continue with isn't the SHIP program and all of that wrapped up into this?
It's separate, but
They're
there is
related.
funding that could come from SHIP, yes.
Now, is there any, the county, I don't believe has any land to put any low to moderate income housing on, do we?
It's a great question, I don't know the answer to that.
You know, that's what we really need. I know that there's been a need to rehabilitate housing, but in order for us to accept the expanded economic growth that we're experiencing, we need low to moderate income housing. I was talking to the superintendent about this, and he said there's no place to put teachers. There are no homes. There is no place to, put these people. So there's where I'd like to see if we can find an area and let the SHIP program for a while deal as best as they can with the rehab, and seeing if we can go somehow after low to moderate income housing in the area. That's what we need here desperately to accommodate the growth that we're getting for the economic expansions.
Yeah, affordable housing.
Affordable housing.
Yeah, this program is more designed to address, it has to be an existing owner-occupied dwelling. That's low to moderate income. So it really doesn't meet.
There goes my request.
Yes, sir. It really isn't designed, it's
So
based on
basically,
the
we have no
occupant.
choice. We have no choice but to go for what he's suggesting.
Yeah, the occupant, it's based on the occupant's income. So really can't need it with a affordable housing, and plus the infrastructure needs costs. We're not really getting much for the $750,000.
That's right.
Especially in today's
And
zone.
that's a great point you make. Spending $750,000, that's not even a milestone. You start talking about water, sewer, those are very expensive endeavors, and you're not gonna get much bang for the buck. But if you can help 11 members of the community, you've created a direct benefit that is, instantaneous, and in my opinion, it's just more.
On your last housing grant, you ended up addressing, just because of cost, you ended up addressing 8 homes instead of the 11, you brought it down, but you did 7, there was homes that were in bad enough shape, that you ended up doing 7 replacement homes and 1 repair. So you actually got people out of existing dilapidated homes and got them to new homes on their site. So I'm looking at, are there any more questions from the CATF?
So on number one, the 11 homes, how will those be chosen?
The way it works is we'll advertise for the open slots. And then, if you decide to go with the housing, you'll do a housing assistance plan. They call it a HAP, housing assistance plan. And it'll have a ranking process. Your last housing had a ranking. It addressed very low income first. And it was very low income, handicapped, elderly, or over 62, and large family. Those were the first ones to get addressed. And if you met all those criteria, you would get it. The problem we had last time was getting applicants. Even though we advertised it and posted, and a lot of people, and we didn't, on the last program, the county did not address any mobile homes. That was one, you had to have a site-built home to get repair or replacement. That may be something they look at this time, where maybe they can go in there and address mobile home as just replacements. They don't have to rehab them, But it may be a possibility where if you're in an older mobile home, that the county could set up their half where they could replace owner occupied older mobile homes. Because a lot of people that didn't get addressed last time were people that just didn't, well, either they were in the city limits, you gotta be in the county, you can't be in the city limits. Or you've got to have a owner occupied, either they had an old title, or came through the family and they were probated it, so they didn't have a clear title. They can have a mortgage, it's gotta be current. Or that they had a mobile home, that mobile homes didn't qualify for the last program. But the county, the board of county commissioners could, if they wanted to, change that one requirement where they could address mobile homes. They don't have, they could rehab them, but they don't want to rehab them. They could at least address ones where if they're bad enough shape, they'll build a new house on that site. Instead of not addressing mobile homes at all. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry.
Just as who's behind,
What'll happen?
who's choosing those 11? Because I see a problem with, well, I was the 12th person, you know, I didn't get chosen. Why did I get chosen?
First, that you have you do the advertisement, and then when everybody submits their application, then a ranking set up based on the criteria in the housing assistance plan. Like I said, very low income, elderly, handicapped, large family get first, and then if you follow one of those categories, but the very low income gets first. And then 50% of median, so very low is 30% of median or below. And then 50% of median or below based on the category, elderly, handicapped. And then 80%, anybody over 80% median, they don't qualify, you have to have the lower income. We'll take that initial ranking, we'll bring it to the CATF as we did last time. The CATF looks over the recommendation rank, they'll say, well, this, you know, they'll have some input and tell us they agree that the people, because a lot of the CATF members will know more than the local public than I will, or even sometimes county staff. And they'll say, well, this guy doesn't appear to, or this person may have an issue or something like that, they'll let us know, but the CATF reviews the ranking. And it's gonna be set on that half, so nobody has a personal input on it, it's really saying that it's not how you feel somebody should get addressed, but based on the composition of the household.
So is it the task force that will evaluate the applications based on this criteria?
The task force will evaluate the criteria, meaning this household is handicapped, elderly, very low, and then they'll review that and make a recommendation to council. Usually you're just gonna take the way it's broke out, and last time we didn't have enough applicants that qualified to fill the 11 slots. And by the time we ended up replacing those homes, you try to do some minor repairs, you gotta do all code violations. But you try to do some with minor repairs so you can do the ones that are worse that need new homes. Well, we didn't get a lot of them, we only had one rehab that qualified. So we ended up doing 7, having reduced from 11 to 8, because we had to do 7 replacement homes. But hopefully this time we'll have enough where the ranking actually is utilized and bring it to you. But you will review, you won't have all their data, you'll have their name, their income level, their household size, their age, and if they're disabled, you'll have all that information. And it'll be on a spreadsheet for you to look at. You remember that, Mr. Coates, from last time?
I do. I do.
Does that answer your, did I rumble on, or did I get it?
We will.
Yes, sir. Basically, you'll review it and make a recommendation.
Okay.
Any more questions from the CATF? Do you have, out of the 4 categories, really ED, you don't have a developer on board that you consider that one. Out of the 3 categories, housing, commercial, and neighborhood, housing rehabilitation, commercial revitalization, or neighborhood revitalization, you have a recommendation of a category that the county commission should look at applying for.
I would recommend category 1.
All right, we have a motion from a
So moved.
non-city employee, county employee. All right, just state your name for the motion and what's your category.
John Code, so moved.
And what category, sir?
Number 1.
Housing rehabilitation?
Yes. Housing rehabilitation.
Do we have a second? Second. Can you state your name for the record? Sure. Jerry for a second. Any more discussion or questions? Anybody from the audience have any questions or comments? None seen. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, next we have we're on adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Are there any questions, or do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
State your name for the record.
John Code.
Do we have a second?
Sure.
State your name for the record.
Andrew Chapman.
Second, Mr. Chapman. Motion by Mr. Coe. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you very much. Have a good day. Thank you for volunteering. I know this is an early morning meeting.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Suwannee County CDBG first public hearing on Wednesday, June 22nd, 2022. This time I'll get Commissioner Fleming to do the invocation and the pledge. Stand if you will.
Let's pray. This morning, our Father, we come again in your name. Thank you for how you brought us and blessed us. Pray you be with us throughout this day. Keep you safe, Father, and on the danger, bless us to take care of the business of this county. Watch over the table. Father, we need you. We need your guidance. We need your understanding, wisdom, and knowledge. Make a way for us out of the way. We come before you in Jesus' name. We pray. Amen.
Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time I'll call the public hearing to order. We have a presentation on the small city CDBG program and program categories. Mr. David Fox with Fred Fox Enterprises Incorporated. And I'll just turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This is the first public hearing for a 2021-2022 CDBG grant application, or community development block grant application. This was advertised for 9:30 a.m. or soon thereafter, June 22nd, 2022. My name is David Fox. I'm with Fred Fox Enterprise. We're a grant writing and administration firm. We work with the county on several grant projects in the past and currently. I'm just going to give you a little overview on the CDBG program. There's a handout that was made available. It's on the blue front page, big letter CDBG. There's some out in the available outside that really needs a copy. The page number is in the top right corner, on page 2. Under this program, the county is eligible to apply for up to $750,000 in categories 1, 2, and 3. This is a competitive grant. The applications are due July 21st, 2022. Under categories 1, housing rehabilitation, 2, commercial revitalization, and 3, neighborhood revitalization, the county can only apply for one of those grants. So if you apply for number 1, you can't apply for a 2 or 3. If you apply for a 2, you can't apply for a 1 or 3, and so on. As long as you have one of those grants open, you can't apply for another one until you close it out in any of the 3 categories. You recently closed out a housing grant, which gives you the availability and qualifies you to apply for another grant in one of those 3 categories. The first category is housing rehabilitation. That's where you go into owner-occupied, low to moderate income households. You have to address all code violations, health and safety issues, and Section 8 housing standards. On your application, you're going to, what you did last time, and for maximum points, you're going to address 11 homes. Based on today's dollars, I'm not sure you're going to get to 11 homes. We weren't able to last time, we ended up doing 8. But that's the original requirement, or proposed, is 11 homes. And they have to all be low to moderate income. The second category is commercial revitalization. And under housing, let me go back to housing. Under housing, all the houses, if you do a housing grant, home's address must be in unincorporated county. You cannot address any houses within the city limits.
Can I interrupt with a question?
Yes, sir.
I mean, I could wait till you get finished, but then we're gonna have to go back through some of these, and specifically in this category, I've got a question. Could you tell us what the term is on this particular grant as far as us spending all of the money? Is it 5 years, 7 years?
The grant contract is, once you get the contract, they work 24 months now. They've been doing 30 months. To do the environmental review and to expend the funds to close the grant out. No housing grant's going to get done that quick. Usually, by the time you got to do a full environmental review, takes about 6 to 8 months after you get your contract, and then you got to qualify your applicants. Last time we didn't have enough applicants, we had to keep qualifying and qualifying. And you've got to do a site-specific environmental review. Your average housing grant takes a good 36 to 48 months to get done. And you can't qualify or apply for any other grants until you get that grant, or grants in this 3 categories until you close that project out.
So,
It's a 30-month original contract's 30 months.
okay. Well, I knew that it took us a lot longer before, so we just applied for extensions. And
We kept applying for extensions. We had, problem we had before, we ended up doing, we couldn't get any rehabs. We ended up doing one rehab, and we ended up doing 7 replacements, so we ended up doing 8 homes. We originally proposed to do 11, but without balancing the money out with rehabs, you can't get it to that number of 11. So finally, I talked with the state, and they allowed us to reduce the number. It didn't affect your funding in future, didn't affect you this time, but it did allow us to reduce the number down to 8. All right, the second category is commercial revitalization. We're going over this
Page number 2 in that.
page I'm going to do.
Open the other way.
That's the other factor here.
Right there, your hand's on. Open the packet in there. Well, there you go. There's
All right, page number 2. So the first category is housing rehabilitation. The second category, possibility, you can only apply for one of these 3, is commercial revitalization. That's when you go into a downtown area. At least 51% of the people benefiting from the downtown. So if it's a commercial area outside of the county, we have to determine the parameters of who benefited. And can't be in the incorporated area. But in commercial revitalization, you can address streetscape, sidewalk improvements, pedestrian mall, building facades. Some communities even do downtown parking as required. But you would have to have a commercial area. And the intent of that program is to bring people down to a dying downtown and get more people downtown. But you cannot address it in the city limits. The third is neighborhood revitalization. Under that one, once again, you must address at least 51% low to moderate income. And you can address infrastructure needs. You can do sidewalks in a residential area. You can do drainage improvements. You can do park improvements, a community center. Those kind of items, we have to determine the beneficiaries once again. And the project would need to be in unincorporated county, not in the city limits. Under 1, 2, and 3, you can only apply for one, and you can only apply for a maximum of $750,000. Category 4 is kind of a standalone. Under category 4, you can apply for one of those every year. Even if you have one open, or even if you have a housing or a commercial or neighborhood, that's the only one you can apply for every year with an open grant. And you can even apply for up to 1.5 million under that one, over the 750,000 maximum. And for every job that's created, the grant amount can be applied for $34,199. If you have one of those existing or have it. That one, basically what you're going to do is you have to have a developer on board. They're going to say they're going to create jobs. They have to be part of the applicant, and you're going to do infrastructure repair or needs up to their property. You don't want to do anything on their property because it's got to be in the county right away. But previously you did a railroad spur, I believe, with that little ED funds, economic development funds. Any questions on the 4 categories?
I have,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, the question I have is, why does it take, is that standard that it takes all these months? So, I know there's involved, but why is it taking so long? Why does it take so many months?
For the housing, the problem in housing, you've got to, when you first apply, you can't, where the other projects you already know who your beneficiaries are, and you don't have, under housing, you have to do a full environmental for the whole county. The environmental review takes about 8 months, just staying alone there after you got your contract. And then you have to advertise for clients. If you don't get enough clients, you start with what you've got, and you keep moving forward with what you've got, but you got to keep advertising, trying to hit that goal of 11 homes. And once you get your clients, after you get picked and ranked by the CATF and ranked by the council, then you have to do a site-specific environmental review on each house, which is another 6-month process. And then you can go to bid on the house, and you got to bid it out. The bid's coming too high, which we had on the last project. We ended up bidding it out again. Some of them we ended up bidding. Some had asbestos. You have to do an asbestos inspection, a lead inspection for pre-1978 rehabs. All homes have to have asbestos. We bid it out one time, one group. The prices came in too high. We tried to bid out the asbestos and the construction separately to get the prices down. Still came in too high. So we ended up bidding out a third time. One of the applicants just backed out. They didn't want their house replaced. We proposed to the other applicant based on the price that we replaced the house, and she was fine with us. We ended up bidding out as a replacement. It just took a long time, and we never did get to 11 homes. One, we didn't have enough funding available, and 2, just we never got 11 qualified applicants. The only thing I could suggest, if y'all look at applying for a housing again, the way you set it up in your housing assistance plan last time, you would not address mobile homes at all. You wouldn't replace them, you wouldn't rehab them or anything. What I would recommend is you can rehab them if you'd like, if they're built before 1998 and they're feasible to rehab. But at the minimum, I would recommend, if you look at doing a housing, is to at least replace dilapidated mobile homes that are owner occupied. That way, because you have several applicants that applied last time because they had a mobile home, we couldn't address them at all. Where if you could at least replace them, if they're in bad enough shape, that would give you a bigger pool of applicants. And you're still gonna have the same problem with the cost, because today's costs are higher, and if you're only gonna replace mobile homes, then you're down to replace it. Last time you put in $50,000 in SHIP dollars, and we'll get down to that further as we go through this presentation, but that may be something too, if you decide to move forward with the housing, it gives you additional points in the application. We have to actually exceed the 50,000, once we get into construction, get bids in.
Okay, one final question. Is that limited only to not inside the city limits, that's outside the city limits?
It must be an unincorporated county, it cannot be in the city limits, any of the houses.
Does
Go ahead, sir.
Does the environmental study and all that come out in the $750,000?
Yes, sir, it does. It's part of
How
the
much is that?
infrastructure fund.
How much money do you end up with in the end?
It costs $700,000 for the environmental study.
Now, usually, your admin costs with environmental, and I don't quote me exactly, I think it's maximum 15%, but usually we'll get that. Usually, the last time, I think it was around 600 construction CDBG, and then you had another 50 in for, shipment. You had 650 available for construction costs. Well, does that sound about?
That sounds right.
Pretty close.
Sounds pretty close.
It is.
Pretty close.
So that's 15, around 15% for the environmental study, then what about the site specific?
15% includes the qualifying applicants, the site-specific, the environmental study, doing the bid specifications. We did all that in-house. I'm a housing inspector, housing inspector, so I can do all those kind of things.
The environmental really was not huge.
Cost-wise, it's just time. You've got to send notifications to all different agencies, to tribes, and then
It
you've got
really isn't
to.
we think environmental is going out there and finding something contaminated. That isn't what this is. This is notifying everyone in the world and asking them if they've got an issue, giving them a comment period. That's what this is about, sending letters out to everyone.
And getting a response time, and they have a response or they have a finding, you've got to reply to that. There's an airport within so many feet, we have to do a noise study.
Job creation.
It keeps it busy, I guess. But
That's what it
is.
is.
Unbelievable.
All right, so back to page 2, you have 3 categories for this round you're looking at, more likely is housing rehabilitation, or a commercial revitalization, or a neighborhood revitalization. And if you have a developer on board, which I'm unaware of, you could possibly put that applying for an economic development. Under the housing commercial neighborhood, they're due July 21st. Under number 4 ED, as long as funds are available, you can apply. There's no closeout on that one or the other ones. You gotta have an application by July 21st, 2022. Any questions on additional questions on slide 2? Slide 3, we'll talk about low to moderate income.
Excuse me, sir, Mr. Clark.
I got a question. On the ED number 4, can, the hair's making an extra, can those grants be stacked? In other words, can you use that one in addition to another grant, or do they
Yes.
stand alone by themselves?
Yes, we've done it.
I was just curious.
In fact, right now, Shannon and I are working on a sheet. We're identifying every grant that there is, and we're reconciling that with the list that we are aware of right now of infrastructure, water, and sewer.
See if we can stack
Trying to
some.
figure out, we're trying to figure out which ones will work best together, because the timing issue is what kills us.
Yeah.
Some take so much longer than others. I mean, I'm expecting some right now that shouldn't take us very long at all. This CDBG though, takes longer, then once you get it, it takes a long time.
But can you get a grant and get started and then stack this one on top?
Absolutely.
You ain't gonna wait on,
The way I did this before, when I did the rail spur, I had 3 different grants involved with the rail spur. And it's a unique situation, so what we had to do for the grant agencies was we had to draw essentially a blueprint and color code how many lineal feet each one of these grants was paid for. The thing, it was kind of crazy, but That's what it took to satisfy what they wanted, so we did it. So yes, in that case, I had 2 of those grants much earlier than I think the CDBG. The CDBG took so long that those other grant agencies were calling me saying, you're gonna have to hurry up and spend this money, because they were getting old. So what we did was as we built that thing, we took all the bills that started coming in, we had to do with the contractor, break it down into sections. And they'll get you the bill, get us the bills, we're gonna spend the oldest money first. So there's a way to do it, we've done it.
And under CDBG, is there federal funds, or a lot of times they use other state funds. A lot more requirements for the federal funds.
But 1, 2, and 3 has nothing to do with 4.
1, 2, and 3 are, 1's a standalone, 2's a standalone, 3's a standalone. You can only apply for one of those.
Mm-hmm.
So if you apply for number 1, you can't apply for 2 or 3. Number 4, you can apply every year, no matter if you got 1, 2, or 3, or number 4. As long as you're on.
It's on our list, we're trying to figure out which one of these projects.
And as spoke, Mr. Harris, with the CDBG, you've got to, if the project's $1 million, or let's say it's a $2 million project, you're trying to get 1.5 from ED, you've got to show that you already got the other 500,000 in place. So the way he stacked it is the way it's required. The other money has to be in place before you get to this grant or apply for these grant funds. Right. So if the project estimate is that high. Any more questions on slide 2? Slide 3, talking about low to moderate income. These are the income limits. They're set by HUD based on area median. For a housing grant, 3 of the homes addressed will need to be under the extremely low 30% income limit. So 3 of the homes, the income, if it's a family of 1, will need to be below $13,590 a year. Family of 4 will need below $27,750 a year. And a family of, say, of 8 would have to be below $40,100. 2 of the homes additional of the 11 will need to be below the 50% level, so they can be up as low as the 30%, but they need to be at least below the 50%. So once again, family of 1 will be $21,250, family of 4, $30,350, and a family of 8 will be $40,100. On the housing grant, every house, no matter that you address, will have to be under the highlighted numbers. So all 11 homes, 8, 11, whatever you end up doing, we're proposing 11 to get maximum points. Would have to be, the family of 1 has to be below 34,000 combined income, family of 4, 48,550 combined income, and a family of 8, 64,100. Under a commercial revitalization grant, at least 51% of the people benefiting from the project, so whoever's in surrounding neighborhoods around the commercial area, would have to be below the highlighted numbers, at least 51%. Same thing with a neighborhood project. If you were doing, for example, under the neighborhood, you need to get maximum points, you need to address at least 85 low to moderate income households. If you're addressing sidewalks, the beneficiaries are the houses just in front of them where the new sidewalks go. At least 51% of those households will need to be low to moderate income, and we have to do enough sidewalks to address at least 84 low to moderate income households. So it has to be a pretty congested neighborhood for the 750,000 maximum. Any questions on the income amounts? All right, page 4. This is a competitive grant. Under the program, every $2,000 that the county obligates for the grant application, you get 1 point, or up to 50,000 in leverage, will give you 25 points maximum. If the project costs more, if you say you're doing a neighborhood project, you're eligible for 750, and the cost of the engineer totals 850, you can still do the 100,000 leverage, or we were prior to as part of the application, but you can only get credit for 25 points up to 50,000. So you have to show that you're going to obligate the whole funds, but for points wise, you only get 25 points, maximum $50,000 leverage. Under neighborhood revitalization and commercialization projects, you can get additional 50 points in the application for going in shovel ready. The design's complete, ready to go to bid. The engineer or architect has applied for all permits. Permits don't have to be in hand, but we have to show that your DOT permit required have been applied for. If there's a water management permit that has been applied for, we have to show receipts with the application. So a copy of the completed plan and specs and receipts for permits would go in with the application for 50 points. Usually you're going to do a shovel-ready project will be something that you're going to do, fund it or not, you're still going to address it at some point in the next 5 years. If you go in shovel-ready, the cost to get shovel-ready for those 50 points is not reimbursable even if funded through the grant. So you're taking a risk for the design for the 50 points, but you will not get reimbursed if the grant is funded.
But it's fundable if it's in the agreement, after the agreement's already entered into.
It can pay for inspection services. If you pay the design, it's going to reimburse you for that design cost. And that design cannot go toward your leverage. The design cost. So if you, basically if you got a, let's say you had, and I know y'all probably have, but let's say you've been cited on your water plan. You had to address the water plan improvements in the next 5 years to get from a consent order. More like even if you don't get funded for CDBG and you apply, you're still gonna have to address this need. So you're gonna go ahead and do the design for the 50 points, knowing that we're gonna try to get CDBG funds to help address the requirement for the citation, but it's not, if we don't get it, we still have to address it. We gotta clear our consent order. That's kind of an example. I don't know if y'all have any sewer or water central. That would be kind of an example of why you would go in so already. It's a project you're gonna do no matter if you get CDBG funding or not. Any questions on slide 4 about the point? It is competitive. Slide 5, these are the steps required when applying for a CDBG grant, small cities program. Appointed Citizen Advisory Task Force, you did that last night. Advertising and hold a CATF meeting, that was advertised and held this morning. They made recommendations, I'll get to you a little later. Advertising and hold a first public hearing, which we're doing right now. Advertising and hold a fair housing workshop, was soon thereafter after this meeting. It's completed and advertised. And then once we get direction, I'll give you the CATF recommendation, you get public comment today. Then if you decide to move forward with an application, we'll get it together and we'll advertise a second public hearing and bring it to you and you say yes or no for submittal. Chairman, I'm going to pass it back to you. Item number 4. I'm sorry, number 3.
We will now open the floor for public comment. Anyone wishing to speak? Name and address for the record, please.
Rich Perkins, 505 Fayette Avenue, Florida. And one of the meetings at the City Hall, we spoke about the community development block grant. I think it's a great thing to do. A lot of people that do benefit from it. I've had the opportunity to be on several counties on their block grant. I worked with Fox on here, on this grant here last month. I built 3 houses. I'm the one that you here out of 8, you build those houses. In your county, well, in Hamilton County, there's a lot over there. Hamilton County has a plethora of applicants that need a house with home repair. And I'm glad that you all are now doing mobile homes, because there's a lot of mobile homes that need to be done here in this county that wasn't done in the last grant. But now you should be getting more houses by those mobile homes. Mobile homes doesn't last. You're not like a site-built home. You don't hold up. You got kids in there, water leaks, road was bad. And I knew we was having a problem getting people qualified on the last grant. There was something that I contacted myself. This Bell here was one of them, and her house got built. She was about 80 years old, and the house was really dilapidated. So, but she was able to get her house fixed and repaired on that. But I would say that you as commissioners, you should look around and see those people that need home repaired, and they know them to get home repaired. This is a good grant. It'll do a lot for people. And I said before, we benefit from it, not only as the homeowner does or the contractor, but also suppliers of people will benefit as well. You don't supply based on my materials here locally. Even I buy here and work in Hamilton County, and they benefit as well. So this is a great thing. I'm glad to see you all doing it to help us get houses. They can press me up in houses and give people in good homes. I mean, they've been living homes for 40, 50 years, and things in bad shape. So I'm glad to see you done.
Thank you, sir.
You state your name and address just for the record.
He did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Fleming.
am I at liberty to say that?
Yes, sir.
Why would you want to put money into a mobile home when we know that they don't hold up, they're not going to last? With that, I mean, I realize it's trying to help, but to put money on is something that would.
What I would recommend, Recently you didn't, but what I recommend is not rehabbing. A lot of communities will do what they call replacement. If it's a mobile home that's in bad enough shape, they'll replace it with a site built. I recommend a block home. They don't repair them. They just do allow to address mobile homes just as a replacement. That way you have a dilapidated mobile home. Before it said they won't address mobile homes at all, no matter if it's a replacement or a repair. Is how it was set up previously. But if you can revise it, if you decide to go to housing, we're still in kind of public comment, but I would, you may want to look in when you develop your HAP or when we develop your sample HAP, housing assistance plan, that you at least consider replacing mobile homes with site-built homes that are dilapidated and not repairing mobile homes.
Mr. Clement, that was in Hamilton County, I think was doing this year. That was, mobile home, they demolished them, demoed them out, we demoed them, and they replaced them. I agree 100%. That 1 year I did one over there, they spent $25,000 to a mobile home, they bought a brand new mobile home. But the homeowner didn't want to move out of the home, he was, somewhat tied to the home, he didn't want to get it paid for. He elected to keep it, and the county, some $25,000 in mobile home, and during that time before, not this back now, mobile homes are very high now too. But back then, you placed a whole mobile home, $25,000. They elected to put that money into a home that they're having a problem with now. So I agree not to waste time in trying to salvage the mobile homes. They're in bad shape, putting that kind of money to them. Best to demolish them and put new up. The site is much better. As far as we use block homes, we put in all those block homes. Hamilton County, we were doing 2 to 6 frame walls over at Hamilton County with the R19 installation wall. I mean, it's very sound home, very efficient home. Homeowner has very little problem with, you have very little problem with their energy costs. And that covering septic and wells in the bid price. So, I mean, it's just a win-win for the homeowner. Bring the value of the property up, taxpayer, and then pay more tax on it, so the county gets tax money out of it.
Thank you. Perfect. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Gotta go to the mic.
I was the person in the county office who administrated this process with the help of Fox Enterprise. And one of the things I think that was most problematic for me is I probably had at least 10 requests I talked to these folks person to person. I heard their story, I listened to their conditions, and there was no doubt they're in need. And the thing that was most disturbing is when they got to the part, but I'm in a mobile home. And then I had to tell them, sorry. So we didn't spend all the money. We turned in some of that money last year, not a whole lot. But I just think there's a great opportunity. We turned away folks, not because we were being insensitive. We had a structure, we had a plan, and we stuck to it. I'm all for that. But I do think it's reasonable to consider changing that plan with some specifications and conditions set on this so that we're not, we're making a good investment to impact the life of, someone in the county that will help them long term. And I don't want to see us just waste things that don't make sense. But I do believe there's a point where it would be reasonable to make some changes on this. And at the end of the day, of all the programs and things that we do, this program has a direct impact to constituents. When folks get through this, it is amazing what is done. And of all the money that we spend, personally, this is my favorite because of what we're able to do. And I would just urge us to consider some alterations that are reasonable and a good framework. But that's all I'd add, sir.
Do we need his name and address too for the record, or?
Sure you do. Shannon Roberts, 1232 Irvin Avenue, Southwest Lathrop, Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
You're very welcome.
Anyone else? Name and address, please.
Wayne Yannick, 1183 93rd Road, Live Oak. Just because you're talking about mobile homes, And I can tell you from experience, you can replace a mobile home with a new home much quicker than you can build anything. Where that existing well, or that existing septic, even the permitting process is quick. So I would urge you to think about, don't try to replace it with a lock home. It'll take you 8 months. You can get a mobile home for the price in 3 months. So, the goal, and probably cheaper. My experience, definitely cheaper. Just a comment.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Let me just make a comment on that. Under this program, one of the requirements when you get the application for points is the new, whatever home we address, a rehab or a new home, that you do green standards and energy efficiency. So if it's I had a county previously that wanted to do single wide replacements. By the time that they had to put in Energy Star windows for the specs, Energy Star doors, Energy Star appliances, and attic installation requirements, the mobile home costs as much as a site build, or close to it. So it is quicker, I agree. But the Energy Star requirements under the CDBG Small Cities program makes the cost so increase. They don't make them standard now, you gotta get a special one. But I agree with the speed lines.
Those items are pretty much standard now.
Energy Star?
I'm not a mobile home. I live in a mobile home.
Okay.
And I'm
Yeah,
not
at
a
the time
mobile
it was.
home salesman, but what you're talking about is pretty much standard now.
At the time, it was about 5 years ago.
Anyone else? Public comment?
I just got a question probably for Mr. Fox.
Name and address.
Gotcha. Stephen Blue, 519 Taylor Avenue. How do you go about selecting the contract? Do you bid it out?
Bid it out, it's all bid
Okay.
out.
I'm gonna disagree with Mr. Hines. I think we should go with block homes, if possible. Coming from experience in a mobile home, they depreciate. I mean, the home value is gonna be there. And I think that improves the tax roll in the county. So if he could, look at block homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none, I'll close public comment at this time. Mr. Fox, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, number 5, we met with the Assistant Advisory Task Force prior to this meeting, and went over to all the categories that we did today for comment. Prior to this meeting, we did, went over all the categories, and the CATF recommended that the council look at applying for a CDBG grant application in the housing rehabilitation category. That was their recommendation.
That'd be number 1.
That would be number 1. Yes, sir. It's number 1, housing rehabilitation.
That's where you can replace.
That's where you go into, and they didn't, at this point, they didn't specify. We talked about the mobile home issue. They would seem to be on board, but they didn't say in their motion if they wanted you to not to address mobile homes or not. That's up to the board if you decide to apply. We have to do a housing assistance plan, like make some revisions to your old one if needed, and bring it to you, and you would decide at that point, or you decide today if you want to even consider addressing mobile homes, if you decide to go with a housing grant application, and if so, to what extent you just want to replace the bad ones that are bad enough to replace, or do you want to repair? That'll be up to you. The recommendation was just to go for the housing category. And under housing, you won't have applicants like the other ones. You kind of know who you're benefiting. Housing, you won't have until you get applied, you get funded, and then you'll advertise for applicants.
One question, you said incorporated areas, like is the town of Brantford incorporated?
Brantford is
itself?
incorporated. They would have to apply for their own housing to address any housing needs
Okay.
in the city limits. Same thing with Live Oak. I think Live Oak, they have a grant, they don't have a housing grant, no grant, I work with them too. They're doing mostly neighborhood projects for their infrastructure.
Moving on to item number 6.
Rodeo, Reno.
No, I was just, there's a lot of low-income housing down there, and I didn't know if this fit
Yeah,
in
we
theirs
did.
because they're a town versus a city.
Because they qualify for their own CDBG grants and they're incorporated, you cannot use county funds under housing to go and do any houses in this.
Do they apply for this?
They applied for neighbor, or they're looking at applying, they've applied for infrastructure in neighborhood, like water, system lines, or they have, where you don't have this infrastructure, like water plant, sewer plant to do it, they have to do this. Most of the cities apply for those, and you get a little benefit.
Well, I'm the commissioner from that end of the county, so that's why I was asking.
You'll see me tomorrow night. We're doing the same thing.
Item number 6, any questions or comments from commissioners?
Just a question, sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Just a question. Mr. Fox or Mr. Harris, the board has to pick, we gotta go with either the recommendation or pick our own of this, 1 through 4. basically.
Yeah, pretty as much as 1 through 3. You don't have to develop on what you consider 4 right now.
Okay.
So you have to pick one of the, either 1, either 2, or either 3.
When do we have to do that by? Today?
They're due July 21st. We have to have a second vote here.
We gotta have 2 meetings.
Oh, okay. Due process, I mean, asking dumb questions.
No, they don't.
That's a good question. Usually we try to have a little more time, but this time they kept saying they're not gonna have a cycle till the end of the year. They're not gonna have a cycle. They're not set every year at the same time. Last year they didn't have a cycle at all. And so now you got 21 funds and 22 funds involved. I think they're getting pressure from HUD to get moving, because they said they weren't gonna do anything until October, November. And then they came out about 45 days ago, 60 days ago, and said, we're gonna have a cycle, we're gonna open it up, and they're due July 21st. They just let us know, I mean, it's been over the last 30 days. They sent everybody an email, and we all got it at the same time.
I mean, I know we're not deciding today, but I mean, you know, as much as I like number 4, I don't wanna leave the folks behind either that are bad.
Well, number 4,
We're gonna do number 4 regardless.
Oh,
you
okay.
can do 4 every year.
Okay, I thought you had to pick one.
On 1, 2, and 3, you can only do 1. Number 4 is a standalone, you can do up to 1.5.
1 and 4.
Yeah, you can do 1 and 4, and you can do 4 again next year if you get the
We'll
next
just
cycle.
go ahead and pick number 1 and not have to do the second
Well,
one.
when we get the next thing right here, we're gonna pick. Item number 7, action by commission on proceeding with CDBG application and in which category? And I guess we would address the mobile home issue at this point here, or?
If you decide to go with the housing category, then yes, we can address it now.
Well, I don't see any other way but number 1.
I can't direct you on,
Well, because you said that sidewalks, any of that commercial revitalization
commercial.
has to be 51% low to moderate income.
We'd have to do, if you decided to go with one of those, if you had a project, we'd have to do a survey, a random survey. On that, commercial, you really don't have a commercial area that I'm aware of,
And neighborhood revitalization for sewer, water, any of that.
or park improvements, or you would have to have, we would have, to- if you decided to go with one of those, we would need to determine the area that you would be beneficiaries from that. So if it's a park and it's like, it's in, and it would be in an unincorporated area, then we would have to see what kind of main, if those are like a playground park, we would need to see the main streets around and how far somebody would walk to get to it, that would actually benefit from it.
But the task force recommended item number 1.
Housing, they recommended going another housing zone. That's your call, like, it's a recommendation, it's not a requirement. So, it's just a recommendation, you can't override it or pick something else if you want. I just got, my role is give you the categories, give you the outline, and then y'all, all input, y'all decide what direction you want to go.
And you just need a motion on that?
I would need a motion for the categories, so.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Stapleton.
I'll offer motion on number 1.
Second.
Motion by Commissioners, we need to address the mobile home issue right here in the
Well,
motion.
go ahead and number 1 is housing rehabilitation, go ahead and approve that category, then we can outline more.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Stapleton to use,
To apply for.
to apply for number 1, housing rehabilitation, second by Commissioner Land. All in favor, aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Yeah, we, go ahead and get some input from you, what you'd like first, the address on the mobile home, if you want to address mobile homes at all. If you do you want to consider rehabilitation? In the HUD requirements, you can't rehab a mobile home built before 1998. So if it's built before 98, you're gonna have to consider replacing it.
I would think just replacement.
All right, so if it's dilapidated, exceeds 51% of the value of the repair, then you look at replacing it.
Replacing with a
not addressing
home.
it at all.
Yes,
Yeah, okay, addressing with a site built block home,
yes.
and the other one.
Oh, that's my,
I would agree with you, I mean, no disrespect, Mr. Hanica, but I agree with, I mean, what Mr. Lewis said on the longevity of the investment by the tax dollars. The block home's gonna be there forever, and the example Mr. Perkins gave of the, elderly person, I mean, at some point, that property may go back on the market for sale, and, you got a block home there, it's energy efficient and stay on the tax.
I think people take more pride in it.
All the time. Should I go with the replacement and use site built?
Mr. Stephen?
Instead of taking more pride in block home versus a mobile home.
I do, I think so.
Agree with that.
I don't know, if you're gonna give me a mobile home or a block home, which one you gonna do?
I thought you meant people out there that has one.
No, I'm saying if you changed, if you took them out of a mobile home, put them in a block home, they're probably gonna take more pride in that block home versus replacing it with a mobile home. Just my opinion.
I don't disagree with anybody on this one, really. I mean, it's obviously site built versus, but, I mean, I have to speak here for the manufactured home industry. I mean, it's kind of a long ways. It's all different than it was back in the day, you know? I don't know. I don't have a problem with it.
Mr. Fleming?
Site built, nothing against it, but, I'm not together.
I have a question for Mr. Fox, Mr. Chairman. Just out of curiosity, as a citizen, when you're talking about the replacement there, is it square foot for square foot, or is it value?
No, it's value, it's based on, the way you set it up last time, if it was a single person in a house, then you would do a 2-bedroom, 900 square foot replacement home. Doesn't have a carport or a garage, it's just a living space. It has a covered front and rear entrance. So if you had two people or less in the house, it would be a 2-bedroom. If it's more than 2 people based on age and sex, so 2 people of the same sex, their children can share a room. 2 children of the opposite sex, based on what guidelines, would have to have opposite rooms, or separate rooms. So if they qualified for, let's say, a 3-bedroom, it was 1,000 square feet, and they went up from there. But it's not as big. I mean, you can look at people are going from a double wide to a, 1,700 square feet, or you go to a 900 square foot or 1,000. That's one of the considerations they understand. And it's in there. They sign a view. We go through the whole thing with them, and this house sizes and everything. They understand that up front, and it's their option to say, no, I don't want to participate in the program, or yes, I do. And that's the same thing with the site build. Even though you had a 2,500 square foot conditioned house, if it's in bad enough shape or needs to be replaced, then these are the proposed square footage we're coming back with if you want to stay in the program. You can't afford it. It's a HUD program. You don't want to go in there and building 3,000, 2,500 square foot homes for a single level person. This doesn't look good to anybody. It doesn't benefit to the people that need to be addressed. That's when you're trying to address 11 homes for a grand amount.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Just need consensus on.
I just need a motion if y'all want to proceed with mobile homes, and if so, only replacing them and not repairing them.
You don't proceed with mobile homes.
We want to replace them, I
Yeah, you have to say in there that if you will address mobile homes only for replacement. Because right now it says no, you won't address them at all.
Right, that's.
With the site, before, what it says now is you're not going to address mobile homes. You have from the last grant, said mobile homes will not be addressed. And that's all it says. So, mobile homes were addressed at all. Repair and replace.
Yeah, I don't want to exclude mobile homeowners that are in need of, if they need it, it doesn't matter to me if they're in a site built and it's in, dilapidated or it's in a mobile home. So I don't personally want to exclude mobile homeowners currently. I just assume, if you want a motion. Mr.
I
Clinton,
would offer motion for the replacement.
using,
With a site built home.
All right, so include mobile homes and as a replacement only option, non-repair with a site built home.
Correct. Motion by Commissioner Fleming,
second.
Second by Commissioner Land, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you, gentlemen.
I'll provide you an updated housing assistance plan that you'll approve during the second public hearing, and I'll have that change in it. If there's any other changes you'll want me to look at, I'll get it to staff this next week, and then if you have any other changes, just let me know. We'll do changes.
With that, I just need a motion to adjourn.
Yes, sir, for this one.
So motion by Commissioner Land, second by Commissioner Fleming, all in favor, aye? All opposed, same sign. At this time, we'll move to the Suwannee County Fair Housing Workshop for Wednesday, June 22nd, 2022. I'll now call the Fair Housing Workshop to order. At this time, we have a presentation on the Fair Housing Act by Mr. David Fox, Fox Enterprises. Mr. Fox.
Good morning, once again, my name is David Fox with Fred Fox Enterprises. This is an advertised fair housing workshop. This is just an information workshop, no action required by the board. I just wanted to get you some information on Fair Housing Act, and also gives you some points in a CDBG application. This is the handout we're going over. It's got a little brick, it says Fair Housing on the front of it. And you copy it, there's one on the table.
There's some extras on there.
Page 1 is just to cover fair housing opportunity for all. Page 2, and the page numbers on the top right in green. The Fair Housing Act, and what does it do? 42 USC prohibits discrimination in housing related to this transaction, including the sale, rental, or financing of dwellings. Discrimination includes refusing to rent to someone, steering someone away from a particular type of housing or neighborhood, enacting zoning measures to exclude particular groups, etc., to the membership in a protected class. Page 3, we're going to go over the protected classes. The protected classes are race, color, religion, national origin, sex, familiar status, and disability. Page 4. What is prohibited under the Fair Housing Act? No one may take any of the following actions based on race, color, religion, sex, disability, familiar status, or national origin. They cannot refuse to rent or sell housing. They cannot refuse to negotiate for housing. They cannot set different terms or parameters, conditions, and privileges for sale, rental, or dwelling. They can't falsely deny that housing isn't available when it is available for sale or rent. They cannot for profit persuade or try to persuade homeowners to sell or rent dwellings by suggesting that people of a particular race, age, sex, etc. have moved or are about to move into a neighborhood. They can't deny any person access to membership or participation in an organizational facility or service related to the sale or rental of dwelling. Page 5. Housing protection under familiar status. It is unlawful to discriminate against a person whose household includes one or more children who are under 18 years of age. That falls under familiar status category, which one or more minor children have lived with a parent or legal custodian. There's one exemption, or actually two exemptions to this. You can go through HUD and set up a 55 and older community or a 62 and older community. Those are exempt from familiar status. But you have to have that HUD exemption. Page 6. Additional protection if you have a disability. If you have a physical or mental disability, including hearing, mobility, or visual impairment, cancer, chronic mental illness, or HIV, that substantially limits one or more major life activities, or if you're regarded as having such a disability, a housing provider may not refuse to let you make reasonable modifications to your dwelling at your expense. For instance, if you needed to rent an apartment and you need to put in a handicap ramp, they can't not allow you to put it in, but they may require you to take it out before you move out, or when you move out, and fix any repairs needed that were damaged by the wheelchair or by the ramp. Then also, you always have the old building with a no pet policy, which allow visually impaired tenants to keep a guideline. Number 7, what housing is exempt from the Fair Housing Act? The Federal Fair Housing exempts owner-occupied buildings with no more than 4 units in single-family housing sold or rented without any use of a broker. There's also the senior housing exemption for 62 and over, 55 and over. So if you own a garage apartment and you want to rent, and you're going to rent it yourself, you're not a realtor, you want to rent that apartment out, you're exempt from the Fair Housing Act because you have less than 4 units, and you're doing it as an owner-renter, a person renting it. If you go through, once you go through a realtor, if it's 1 unit or 4 units or more, then you're still under the Fair Housing Act. So it's as a person renting their own property with less than 4 units is exempt. If you think your rights have been discriminated, there's several avenues you can go through. You can contact the Florida Commission on Human Relations. You can go to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The regional office is out of Atlanta. or you can go through U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to our Washington DC office. And one of the easiest ways is to go through HUD's website, www.hud.gov/fair housing, and there's a link for the fair housing there, and you have to walk through a complaint process. What you will need to provide a complaint on page 9, you need to supply your name and address. The name and address of the person your complaint is against, the address or other identification of the housing involved, a short description of the alleged violation, the event that caused you to believe your rights were violated, and the dates the alleged violation occurred. Some local ordinances have a 45-day limit or 60-day limit. You need to make sure when you're filing your complaint that you're within any local ordinance or whatever ordinance you're going to utilize with the complaint. So it needs to be a quick response. You don't need to wait 6 months or a year to file a complaint, because you may be expired at time. 10, what happens when you file a complaint? The officer receiving the complaint will notify the person filing the complaint and the alleged violator of the filing of your complaint and allow respondent time to submit a written response. They'll investigate your complaint. HUD actually has a department that does investigations for fair housing complaints. You go through the HUD office, they have 100 days to respond to your complaint. If they don't get to you within 100 days, they got to give you some response extending the date. And they're required to do a Fair Housing Act conciliation, run a complaint investigation, required to offer you and the respondent the opportunity to voluntarily resolve your complaint. Page 11, go back to the chairman for questions.
Now I open the floor, open the meeting for questions from the commission and the public. Anyone wishing to speak? Seeing none, Mr. Turner?
Yes, sir.
I just need a motion to adjourn. Motion by Commissioner Stapleton,
Second.
second by Commissioner Land. All in favor, aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. And I want to thank the CATF again for volunteering their time.
Yes, sir. Thank you for all the people that volunteered their time to do this. We surely appreciate it. Thank you, Commissioner, for joining us.